Welcome back to the Mental Dietitian podcast. I'm your host, Ahren Lynch-Potter, and today's guest, his name is Nathanael Burke. I first met him when I first came to Canada within the fitness industry, and he has, since then, he's still involved in the fitness industry, but he's moved more into coaching, and he's coaching people still within around sports. He had a good career during, I think, high school and university doing football. And he's the host of I almost said my own podcast there. He's the host of the Emotional Fitness podcast. And him and his wife, Emily, have a coaching company called Live Purposefully, holy crap, .ca. Welcome to the show. Screwed up the introduction, but it doesn't have to change anything. How are you, man?
I'm doing great, and thanks for the introduction. I appreciate that, and don't worry about bumbling through it. I mean, I've been called a lot worse, so we're doing good. Yeah, good things to say. So
yeah, man. I wanted to have you on the podcast because I was on yours, and we had a really good conversation. And yeah, man, like I've gone through your social media and just the conversations you're having and the things you're talking about are much needed these days, and we need more people to talk about them. What inspired you to to be a mindset and relationship coach, and what inspired you to maybe, I know that you're still involved in the fitness industry in some way, shape, or form, but what inspired you to kind of look at more the inner world versus the outer world?
good question. Well, first, it was actually a friend of mine that brought this up about a year and a half ago, and we had this good conversation. He was just so full of energy and had a really wonderful mindset. And, sometimes when people see you in a certain light and they say a certain thing, it sparks something, right? And so that was the very, the little spark that started this. And then from there, I mean, like I said, I've been in the fitness industry for 8 years as a trainer, 8, 9 years as a trainer. And seeing people get results is always such a wonderful thing. It's honestly the best part about it. And more importantly, not just the results, but it's the impact it has on their lives as a whole. Now I'm able to do this hiking trip. Now I'm able to do these wonderful things. I had a lady 2 years ago that I trained way back when I was at Good Life. And she called me years, like almost a decade later, and told me that she finally went on that trip that she wanted to do. And she was 80 years old or 85 at the time. And I'm convinced, and we had a good conversation about starting training, and she was very reluctant to it. And so she did. But part of that was that I had to break down that belief. And what I started realizing is that, yes, fitness makes a massive impact in your life for sure. But what separates people that are really successful in fitness and that are not successful? And it's mindset. It's their belief within themselves. It's their emotional state as a whole. And so that's when I started realizing, yes, I can have an impact on one person's life, or I can start helping trainers grow their business. And more importantly, the emotional and mindset side of doing that, and how to have that ripple effect. So that way, if I can help 10 or 15 different people impact 20 different people, that's a huge impact I'm having now, which is so amazing. And it's a great feel because when someone gets in shape and they change their life forever, they feel amazing. When you break somebody's beliefs and how they feel about themselves, their lives are changed forever. And so it's really is a wonderful field to be in and to be able to have that kind of impact.
Yeah, man. Yeah, when you said about that 85-year-old woman, 80-year-old woman that went on that trip, I literally like had I don't know, kind of goosebumps, because it's just like,
Yeah.
The fact that you didn't hear from her for almost a decade and she called you just shows that. And there's two things here: that sometimes pushing people, especially when it comes to sales, is not a bad thing.
Yes.
It's not a bad thing if you can see that it's actually what they really want. But a lot of people go wrong with that. I teach a course to coaches. I coach coaches as well. It's extremely rewarding because what you said, you can have a bigger impact with helping them expand their businesses and helping them do things, and then that ripple effect is giant.
Yes.
And yeah, a lot of coaches struggle with that selling side of things. But any person listening to this, what he just said is she was reluctant, and you were probably like, hey, here's the benefits, here's the value, here's what I know I can bring to the table as your trainer. If you're with me, I'll make sure you get results as long as you do everything on your end. You probably had some kind of conversation like that. And the impact that you had in this woman's life 10 years later, she's giving you a call and like, I went on that trip. Thank you for pushing me, even though I was reluctant. That's the first thing I thought of, which is really, really cool.
And on that, not to interrupt you, is that, sorry, but that was the part that I thought was so powerful. And it's a story I use when I'm helping people understand that what you're doing is so powerful. And this lady said no to me 10 times during our first conversation. No, legitimately, like, hey, you need this training. But I didn't come at it out of a place of I need to make a sale, because I didn't care about the sale. It was like, you need this so bad because of everything you just told me. And sales is service. So if you can't do that, if you can't help them cross that barrier and cross that threshold, you're not able to help them.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a reminder I give to other people and myself sometimes too, is like, right, you are going to hear that no, sometimes 10 times over. But on the other side of that, you have this amazing, wonderful story. Right. So it's worth it.
Yeah. It depends. Like you said, it depends what your intentions are if you're selling something to somebody. And people are very intuitive. If you are trying to get a sale and you're not genuinely coming from a place of service and helping them, then maybe you will be a good enough communicator to manipulate them, and maybe you're so slick with your words. Maybe. But it does, that you don't want to come from that place. That's not how I want to sell. I've sold like that in the past when I first got. I've been in sales for 11 years. I remember getting into sales and seeing the opportunity with money and being like, oh, cool. And then seeing people as dollar signs. I did that for a little while. It doesn't work. People see right through the bullshit of a 21-year-old that's like saying this kind of shit. And it doesn't feel good. And like you said, it's service. It feels good. It feels more. My course I have is called soul-centered selling, and it feels soul-centered. It's like, it feels good, and it feels like the start of a friendship versus like a one-off cold transaction, which is a lot of what sales is for people. Yeah, man, like, that's huge. Another thing that I got out of what you were saying before is that I experienced this in my own way, and you said it in a different way. But when I was training people, I would notice that their stuff would come up, their emotional stuff would come up. And it's kind of sad, but out of every 100 people I trained, I'd probably say 3 to 5 of them right now probably go to the gym 3 to 5 times a week consistently, often. A lot of the people would have this kind of, I call it an addiction mindset or a temporary mindset, where it's like, oh, I want to do this thing, which is training, for this certain period of time so I can get here. Or I want to do this thing so I feel this. It's like, no, you want to do this thing because it's an extension of you loving yourself. Yeah. That's what it really is. And I think people what I noticed, what got me into coaching, is that I could give you the best plan in the world, but if you don't love yourself and you don't believe that you deserve to be healthy and to have a great life, I can't do shit about that. Yeah. I didn't have the skills. I didn't have the coaching skills, the knowledge about how trauma works, and none of that. And I would get frustrated with people. I'm like, hey, there's this blueprint right here. If you just follow it, it will work. Like, and it sounds like you had your own journey around that. Sorry, my voice is. You had your own journey around that, where you kind of saw that in the same way, where their mindset and how they believe about themselves. So how was it when you transitioned more into a mindset kind of emotional kind of coach and then imprinted that with the moving your body as well? How's that been over the past 1.5 years, 2 years?
It's been honestly amazing. And a great way I explained it to people is we've all had epiphanies before. Right. And not like, oh, that's cool, but like really like powerful ones. You're like, oh my God, how did I not think of this before? Boom, here's an answer. And that's essentially what coaching is you get to be the person to facilitate some of those epiphanies. And when people realize, it's like, right, I'm the one that's been getting in my way because I had the same epiphany too, just like you have, and just like every coach before, and not just in business and not just with their self, but with their relationships and in all these different categories, you have those epiphanies. And so to be able to have that epiphany and be able to help them navigate that and see that is absolutely massive. And really, I mean, when you think of what kind of results you can get when you truly deep inside have that belief, it's like I would say a good example is like if you were to ask anybody what's something you truly believe about yourself that nobody could ever take away from you, and they'll say something like, well, I have really amazing eyes. It's like, yeah, you do. You're so strongly convinced that you have amazing eyes like that. What if you had that same conviction with your belief in your fitness or your belief in your relationship, that you are worthy of love, that you are worthy of having abundance, that you are worthy. And so you know how to have the feeling, you know that you've felt it before. Why can't we just start dumping it here and here and here and start sprinkling in and trying it? So in terms of like helping, to go back to your question, in terms of helping people, yeah, it's been amazing because once they have those epiphanies, it's like a fire is lit under the butt. I had a really great session with another guy, and that has been a trainer for 10, 15, somewhere in there, 10 to 15 years. I actually have to find out. But he's been super successful. And he came to me and I'm helping with this stuff. And I'm going, hey, well, here's all this stuff. Yes, it's a lot of like sales stuff, but half it's the mindset. And we go over all these things. And I'm like, hey, man, we're meeting week after week, or I think every 2 weeks, sorry. And you're not like, these things just aren't happening. What's going on? And so we dive into his beliefs, and then we dive into this. It's like, oh, well, his belief is that the economy is going to crash. So what's the point?
Yeah.
It's like, well, so if you truly believe that the economy is going to crash, what's the point? Well, then of course you're not going to do all these amazing things that you already have the skills to do. Mm-hmm. Your belief isn't there. So if your belief's not there, it don't matter. The golden recipe, it's not well. And so it's interesting because then we had that shift and it was like, right, well, what's another way to look at this economy? What's another way to look at how things are going right now with the government? And if you're spending all your time being inundated with that information, came up with a new metaphor. We came up with a new belief or just a different belief. Not a complete 180, but yes, the economy could. But when you look at economies and you look at the best companies in the world right now, most of them have started during a bad economy. Okay, that's a fact. Okay, so that means that you can start and be successful during a bad economy. Yes. Okay, so maybe we can just have that instead of it being a 180. Maybe we just go from here to like just a few degrees that way.
Yeah.
And then boom, action starts happening, and boom, oh, I got this client, and boom, and it's just all of a sudden this like chain effect, and you're like, holy crap. I have another guy, which is not to sit here and brag, but it blows me away because we had the same discussion about his own value and because he's a nutrition coach and should I be charging this much? And then we start going into things and finding out his belief and finding out where he's sitting and his value in himself and being able to pull that out and challenge those and not in like a you're wrong, because that's not what it's about.
No.
It's just, how do you want to feel? How can we implement that today? How can you start feeling that today? And then boom, he's getting a client a week, which is really good.
Yeah.
Like honestly, every day he was like, I got another client. And then all of a sudden it was in 1 week, he got like 3 clients. And I'm going like, dude, I was like, yeah, I helped you. But like, I almost want to go back to him and be like, dude, how are you doing this? Yeah. Like, this is crazy.
Hey man, can I do a session with you? Because
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm like, maybe I'm not doing something right here. Like, but it's because it was just a mindset shift. And when I talked to his friends and they're like, yeah, it was just something that like, he had it. He just needed somebody to see it and to pull it out of him and to be able to help navigate that. And a really good metaphor. And I know I'm going on a bit here, but a really good metaphor, maybe you want to adopt as well as I talk to people, is if you understand how like ocean liners work. So ocean liners, massive ships, these huge container ships, and they carry hundreds of containers filled with valuable goods. So value. They take them from across the ocean. It's a massive journey. I think it takes 2 weeks. Crazy storms, weathers, winds, all of it. They'll go through all of it. But what happens before they can unload all that value? There's a little boat that comes along, a little tugboat. And that little tugboat, he's not the guy holding all the value. He doesn't have to hold all that. He just says, "Hey, you're 98% of the way. I'm just taking you that last 2%. I'm going to navigate you into the port so you can unload all this value." And that's what I do. I'm the tugboat that takes people with a lot of value, but they don't understand how to communicate that, don't understand how to get that to people, help them just that last little bit. And they feel good doing it. And then I get to help, and they get to help more people, which is such a wonderful thing.
I love that analogy. Yeah, it's like that's what you are. You're not. That's why there's a lot of people in this space, like maybe not necessarily in your particular space that you're talking about, in the space that I'm in, which is kind of like trauma-informed coaching. So I work with people who have depression and anxiety and things like that. You're more working with coaches that already have their own businesses by the sound of it. And the coaches I work with are trying to build businesses within that. So what I run into and what that analogy is so good because some people call themselves healers they're like, "Oh, I'll help heal you." It's like, nah, I don't like that because the only person that can do anything about that is that boat. The tugboat isn't. The tugboat is the guide. It's like, hey,
yes,
you have all the answers within you. You may not know that you do, but you do. Like you're so much more wise. You have so much. You don't know how powerful you are. It's like that saying. It's not that we're inadequate that scares us. It's that we're powerful beyond measure. Like that.
Yes.
Quote, I think is that Coach Carter? I think it's
Coach Carter. Yeah. It's not from Coach. Sorry, that's what made it popular. But yeah, it's an absolutely wonderful part of the movie.
Yeah, that's what blew it up. And it's just like, it's like, that's so true. And I've had my own experiences with that when I had experienced that about a year ago when I sat with ayahuasca for the first time. And I thought it was very profound where it's like, you actually have nothing holding you back except the belief that there's something holding you back. I was like, oh, fuck. Like,
oh, no.
Oh, shit. It's like, you can do anything you want. So what are you going to do? And then when you get given that responsibility, like we were talking about before we started recording, when you actually feel that, and you maybe have a coach like Nathanael or a coach in any other space that you get coaching around. And I have a coach. I have coaches that help me because the best people in the world have coaches. And to think that you can do it on your own is naive. I'm sorry, but you are not perfect. You're a human being. You need the tugboat. We all need that little tugboat to guide us into the port of what we want to do, because we all have. Sounds like what you do and what coaching is you help dissolve stories that people have constructed in their own way that they see reality.
Yes.
Like, oh, I believe the economy is going to crash. It's like, what does that mean? It means that the belief is, and it might come from a deeper place. It might be like, what's the point? These good times are going to end at some point. So what's the point in putting in all this effort? And that person probably applies that to other areas of their life. They might apply that to their relationship. They might not commit to their relationship because like, oh, well, it could end. Things could go sideways. It's like, yeah, and so what are you going to do? Like, or they may be unbelievably, amazingly fucking awesome. Like you pick which kind of fuel you allow to drive you. Are you doing it from a place of fear or are you doing it place from abundance?
Yeah.
And that's what coaching is you're helping people, especially like people that are already successful that maybe feel a little stuck in little areas that then can expand and start helping way more people. It's rewarding. Like it's unbelievably rewarding what you do, what I do, just the whole space, especially when it comes to seeing somebody unlock something like that. Like it's amazing.
Absolutely.
What's the biggest, not going to say, because I know that this question doesn't make sense. I was going to ask you the question, what's the biggest unlock you've ever had? But it doesn't work like that. It's more of like more of an unraveling. It's like unlayering parts of the onion. What I'll ask you is, what is something over the past maybe 6 months that you've had that has helped you in, whether it's your relationship, whether it's your business, whether it's your health or fitness, that that you think is really valuable that you want to share?
It's a great question because our lives are built off of our habits, right? And there's a lot of people that talk about that. And it's true every time. Your habits will dictate who you are, no matter what. So if you are somebody that you show up to work late all the time and you don't really socialize, and then you rush home to watch your movies and your TVs and whatever, and you're spending a lot of time on your phone, anybody can kind of start to realize, right, this is what your life will be like. And so what I started realizing probably probably the last year or more, but for myself is realizing like my habits are going to dictate my future. So having that long-term perspective, looking at it not just from today, but looking at it like, okay, if I continue this habit for the next 2 years, what'll happen? So that brings into the compound effect, right? A lot of people have heard of that. When you take a penny and you double, would you rather have $1 million today or a penny doubled?
31
So
days.
1, 2, 4, how much will you have which one would you rather have? And if anybody that understands a compound effect will know that by the time you get to the 30 days, it's like $6 million. So that's really the biggest thing is like looking at those small little things as you're just stacking up the pennies. And I did this with a guy recently, and it actually blew his mind and this is something that I have to a constant reminder for myself is like, yes, I learn things, but the more you go into it, the more you feel like you don't know. Right. But to somebody on the outside, they're like, oh my God, that's mind blowing. And so I did this exercise with a guy. And it was crazy, his response, because in my head, I'm like, yeah, I've seen this. I remember this when I was a kid and I was like, this is super cool.
Yeah.
But he was blown away. He was like, I got him to do it. And I was like, hey, 1 times 2, 2 times 2. And we went through every day and I marked it down. Okay, we're at 15 days. Where are we at? $10. I was like, not, or $20, wherever it was, not very far. And he's like, no. I said, would you still take the million? He's like, yeah, of course I'd take the million. I'm like, okay, let's keep going. Day 20 or day 25. And it's like, 10,000. Would you take the money? No, I wouldn't. I'd still take this. And it wasn't, I maybe get my numbers off, but either way, it wasn't until the last 5 days that it was like boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
Right. And then all of a sudden, and then you're there, then you're at 6 million. So my point there is just understanding that compound effect. So for anybody, and I tell this to myself as a reminder, truly, is if you're building a business, do those calls. If you are in a relationship and you're just trying to figure it out, you're not sure, take that time to daily to tell them how you feel. Take the time to go for a walk outside. Take 10 minutes, even if you're, having a bad day, that's fine. Take 10 minutes to just close your eyes and do nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Take 10 minutes to exercise for 10 minutes, move your body. And to be honest, I'm actually making a course on how to do these things. And these are some of the things I'm teaching. And it's not launched yet, but pretty quick here, probably a few weeks away.
Cool. Very cool.
Yeah, but it's just the little habits, these little things that don't seem like much. It doesn't seem like a big deal to go from watching 2 hours of TV shows a night to 1.
Mm.
But if you take that hour now and you were to do some exercise, or just have some really good quality time with your partner or your best friend and just talk or play a board game or laugh, make it, talk about silly times or fun times you've had, or to go for a walk with your dogs or whatever, like it will matter.
Yeah.
You don't notice it today, but if you were to compound that 100 times over, what will that look like? And so a really great saying, it was a really wonderful book from Brian Tracy. He talks about financially successful people. And he says that if you're going to categorize them all, the one thing that separates the most ultra wealthy from the absolute poorest is time perspective.
Mm.
And so he says, like, if you are like, let's say the very lowest of the low, homeless, let's say you're addicted to drugs, whatever, you can't see more than a few minutes ahead of you, an hour.
No.
And then it's the next person, maybe a day or two, in a week or two. Whereas the ultra wealthy are looking years, 10, 15, 20 years, sometimes generations in advance.
Yep.
And so it got me thinking, I'm like, well, clearly that makes sense. Look at these people that have done this. Can I apply this same principle to being emotionally fit? can I apply this same principle to relationships? Can I apply that same principle to anything I want to grow, and specifically the emotional side? If so, then I should do it. If this is something that 10 years down the road, 5 years down the road, a year down the road, future Nathaniel's going to be like, dude, that was a good idea.
Hmm.
Yeah, like, okay, then do it. A really good example I've been doing is this last year, I started to up again. I did it with the fitness industry and it was wildly powerful. And I had my daily learning journal. And I actually just found some of my old journals and I did it for like 3.5 years. And I would learn something new in that field every single day.
Wow. Within the fitness
So
industry, you were learning
in the fitness industry,
something small, like it's a little thing. Yeah.
yep. So anything from like the body, psychology that I could use to help people, nutrition, habits, anything at all that I thought was valuable and I could use. And so again, I at first I'm like, well, this is tough and it would take a while. But then I look back, I'm like, that was 950 whatever entries.
It's a lot.
That's a lot.
Just a
And what I
thousand
noticed,
things.
yeah. And what I note, and again, I couldn't recite every single one of those, but when the time came, weirdly enough, I could. And so what I found was having conversations with doctors and physios and different people up in the higher echelon of that industry.
Yeah.
And I was keeping up with them and they're kind of like, oh, how are you doing this? And it's like, well, because I've just been reading my ass off and trying to continue to learn and grow and having these perspectives. And so my point there is like, can you do that now? Or that's an easy habit you can do now. And to be able to do it now with this space is reaping massive benefits.
Very cool.
Absolutely massive benefits. So yeah, sorry, I kind of went on a roll there, but
No, that's what it's about. That's what I love about podcasts is if I ask the right questions with people, people unlock their genius. And like you've unlocked a few things that are within you that are so powerful that anybody listening to this is going to benefit from that. I've read The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy so many fucking times, dude. It's such a great book. That I remember reading that and it blew my mind. And I think that this is what I've struggled with coaching and with lots of things when I'm teaching something to somebody. And what my podcast coach, Kevin, he's like, do you know what I think that holds you back? And I was like, what? He's like, you think people are more aware than they are. I was like, oh shit.
Yeah.
So that thing of like, oh, I knew this penny double thing. I thought everybody knew this. And then you somebody for the first time and they're like, what? Like they're having the same paradigm shift that you had when you were 17, when you read that book and you're like, whoa. And now they're in their 30s and you're explaining that to them for the first time or in their 20s or whatever. And you're like, I thought that people knew this. And I go through the world thinking that people know this, but they don't. Yeah. And like, and it's not coming from a place that you're superior or that they're low. No. It's not coming from that place at all. It's just for me, that's something that I've struggled with, and it's held me back from teaching people things. Is like, oh well, there's a million people talking about this. Everybody knows this, but it's simply not true. It's unbelievable when you start having conversations. And any person listening to this is why I'm sharing it with you. There's things that there's value on your shipping container, going back to that analogy, that you think is on everybody else's ship, but it's not. Yeah. You have things that only you can share. You're the only person that ever had the experiences, the memories, everything that you've ever gone through that has specifically shaped you to see reality the way that you do. What does that mean? It means that you can offer gifts to the world that nobody else can. And we live in a world now where the highest paid YouTuber was a kid that reviewed toys.
I remember that's wild.
Wild. And then I saw this Instagram account the other day and I laughed. He had like 40,000 followers, right? And I'm like, do you know what he does? He roasts mailboxes in LA. So he goes up to mailboxes and he does these funny videos where he makes jokes about how silly these mailboxes look. And 40,000 people watch this guy. And what I loved about this dude is I'm like, this is a break from how serious the world is. Like, you got this fucking debate. You got Israel, you got Palestine, you got Russia, Ukraine. And all of a sudden you're on social media and this guy's like, look at this fucking mailbox. Who does he think who he is? And I'm like you might be like, oh, that's silly. That guy's being a dork. But I'm like, we kind of need that dude that's so stupidly niche that
Mm,
like he literally has an audience of 40,000 people. Like, what could you potentially do with that? Like,
yeah.
this, it sounds silly. It's just a silly little analogy, but that everybody has their own unique gifts. And
Yes.
it sounds like that's what you love doing is helping people see their unique gifts because you
Yes.
don't know what they are. You're just the
Yeah.
tugboat. You're just like,
Yeah.
I don't know what they are, but if you spend enough time with me, I'll notice them by how you speak, what words you use. And going back to habits, if you haven't read it, people listening to this, I'm sure you've read it. It's Atomic Habits by James Clear. It is the best book on habits that I've ever read. And it has a quote that you reminded me of that I used to say all the time is that every action you take is a vote for the person you are going to become.
Yep.
Every so if you're eating a cheeseburger, you are voting for to be 300 pounds. If you are not getting up, if you're not exercising, you're voting to be an unhealthy person.
Yep.
And it goes back to identity. What kind of identity do you want to have? Do you want to be a healthy person or do you want to be an unhealthy person? Do you want to be in touch with your emotions or do you want to not know what the hell they are when they come up and take a pill or drink a beer or go avoid them or whatever?
Yep.
Who do you want to be? And then that compound effect you were sharing is like, well, if you're 30 right now, what is 35-year-old version saying to you? If you could sit across
Yeah.
the table with them, what are they saying? What is the 40-year-old version of you saying to you? And
Yeah.
it playing that game with yourself, it's like, yeah, like even you saying that, I'm like, I spend too much time on Instagram. I know I do.
Mm.
Yeah, but my algorithm is specifically designed for what I love to see. It has
Yeah.
all the things that I want to see. And it's like,
Yeah.
I could spend so much time there. But if I spend an hour a day on that, 365 days a year, over
It's a lot
10
of hours.
years, that is 3,650 hours. The average person works, I think, two to 4,000 hours a year. If I replace that hour a day with something, what could I create?
Yes.
Who I could create?
Yep.
It's an entire year's work full time on something, 40 hours a week on something over
Yep.
10 years. So,
Absolutely. And it's funny because you said that book. The best part was is I actually never learned that from that book.
yeah.
I had a teacher I distinctly remember, and it was, I want to say grade four. Yeah, it was grade four teacher that showed us this principle. And
Oh, cool.
it absolutely shocked my mind. And I have a good memory, thankfully, for stories and visual and that sort of thing. But I can imprint, I can literally see him now writing it on the board. And I'm just being in so much awe. And so my point there was like I had the blessing of that so early
Hmm.
and understanding it. The best part is though, is like for anybody, it's not you're 35, cool. You have a whole lot of life left ahead of you. You're 40, great. You have a whole lot of life. You're 50, you got a whole lot of life. What can you do in that time that you want to make an impact, or more importantly, just start by feeling good,
Yeah.
right? Can you put that into place? And I love what you said before. And it's funny because that is, I actually when I was meditating, it was a deep meditation. That was about a year and a half ago. That was something that came to me was like this idea of like, you are like a lighthouse, myself being like a lighthouse to like help pull the best out of people and to be able to help them be the best version of themselves and seeing those gifts. And to add to what we were talking about before is it's so funny because sometimes you run into people that are like, well, I can do this myself. And it's like, you can.
Of course you can.
Truly.
You can.
I can try to do my own roofing on my house, and I could try to do my own electrical work, my own
Yep.
plumbing and all this stuff. I can. I could. But do I want to? Right? No. Two, I gotta learn it. That's gonna be frustrating. That's gonna take a lot of my time. Or I can go back and go, who's somebody that absolutely loves this? Why can't I let them share their gift? Right. And if everybody, and that's part of the message too, is like if everybody understood that everybody had a gift, And the key is just to find out what it is. I think you'd see a lot more cohesion and just people moving and working together differently, especially in businesses, especially in, you have corporations and whatever you're working in. If everybody understood that Ahren does really well with people that have an ego up here, and your just gift is for, let's just say I'm making this up, but if you're like, if you did great that with people with up here and their ego is this, and other people were intimidated by them, but that was your gift, and you could somehow just rise to these people and they love, great, why not let you have those people? And then, hey, there's this person that's unsure and doesn't know where they want to be. There's somebody else for that. There's somebody that would absolutely love to be the person helping you organize their life. There's somebody out there that would love to do your social media, right? Because that's their gift, because they can see the intricacies and it's easy for them and they love it and they fills them up.
Yeah.
So yes, part of it is like pulling out the gift and then helping them share it. And on the third side of that is receiving someone else's gift. Because if nobody receives, then nobody can give. Right? I'm gonna say it again. So if nobody, I always think of, yeah, and me and my wife talk about this lots. It's like, because we always like to help a lot of other people as best as we can. And sometimes it's emotionally, sometimes it's just, we're volunteering our time. Sometimes we will financially, but we do our best. And that's her heart, to be honest, more than mine. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean like that's her heart. But with that, we always have to have the reminder of, because sometimes when it's flipped and, hey, I want to do this nice thing for you, we're like, oh, no, you can. And then we have to have this conversation of, hey, you know what? It's okay. Like, let's let them be nice to us.
Exactly.
And we can accept it graciously, and we can accept it with courtesy and kindness. And then they feel good, and we both get to feel good.
Have you read The Go-Giver?
Yeah, it's a great book.
Yeah. I was like, that's where I got that from. It's like every giving is a receiving and every receiving is a giving. And it has that analogy about trees. Like, imagine if trees, I use this in my sales course. So my first module is based on that book. And imagine how silly it would be if the trees were like, oh, no, I don't want your carbon dioxide. Thank you. We'll just give you oxygen. But we don't, that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
We don't want that. That would be silly. The sun gives to the moon. The half of the planet right now is covered in shadow and the other half is covered in light. And there's cyclical things. There's things in nature that are cyclical. If you start shutting that down when you deny somebody else's right to give, you are shutting down the flow of things. And it's also quite arrogant in a way to be like, oh, I don't need you to do that. It's like, well, you know how good it feels for you to give, for you and your wife to give. It feels amazing, and you feel good.
Yeah,
good to give, and you're stopping that on somebody else's end. Like, come on, like,
yeah. And I say it ties back to a lot of the times, and this is something that I've previously struggled with, and my wife, we've had to work through this, is the self-value. Because if you value yourself enough, then realizing that the thing you did was actually very kind and took your time, and your time is valuable, or that money that you gave, or the knowledge, or whatever it was, that whatever you gave was valuable.
Exactly.
And they valued it. And so it's okay to receive either that, or you have a huge amount of pride. And then that's another story as well. But for myself, previously, it was a lot of just self-value. And so that's where having that coach, and I've been coach, and my wife's a life coach, and she helps coach me all the time, and constantly pulling that out of me and like, right, no, hey, you're valued, and these things that I help other people with. So
what do you struggle with in that department? What is something that you believe is holding you back right now from taking what you do to greater heights?
That's such a good question. So funny, because I feel like it always comes back to yourself. Truly, it's always myself.
Oh, you.
And and what part of myself? I would say it's the good question. I mean, give me a second to think about this. What stops myself? What stops me? It's honestly, it's fear.
Yeah. What is the
And I think most things come back to that, but fear of not being able to do it, fear of rejection, fear of
being seen?
being no, because I love being seen. That's why I started a podcast, and I like that. But it's the fear of rejection, it's the fear of not being loved, it's the fear of not being cared for. I think that comes back to being a middle child, being, everybody forgets about your birthday because of, it's the end of the summer, nobody can come, and all that kind of stuff that ties in there. I think it really stems on that, but it's funny because it's a bit of a paradox, because it's like I love being seen, but I'm also longing to be loved. And it's like, no matter what, I can't be loved by everybody. It's impossible.
Impossible.
It's impossible. So
to try to be loved by anybody is not loving yourself, because then you are now disrespecting yourself by becoming a chameleon to different people.
yes, exactly. And that's something I've struggled with. And I think there's value in flexibility, but coming back to your values and who you believe are. And that's something that's really shaped me recently, is like, right, what are my values? What do I believe in? What's important to me? And how can I live these values out every single day as best as I possibly can? And I don't win every day.
No.
But the days you do, man, they feel good. Yesterday it was when I was like, no, I got to get back to doing this habit because I believe in this. And I started doing it. And I got a result that I wanted. And I was like, okay, right. And it felt good. And it wasn't like the best result, but it was a result and it feels good. So to answer your question, it's my scared 10-year-old, I'm going to say 10 to 12-year-old version of me that really wants friends, that really wants people to like him and respect him, that holds me back. And I know his voice, but I also know he doesn't have the only voice. And that's something that I help other people with too, is like, that's just one voice in there. We've talked about this before, as my king, right? I have my warrior. I have my lover. I have my magician. I have these people there. Not only do I have those people, not only do I have these versions of myself, but what I do for myself, because I'm a very visual person, I'm really good in practice and actually teach people visualization. And so to help overcome that voice is, one, I listen to it.
Yeah.
Right. What are you trying to tell me? Like, what are you actually trying to tell me? And most of the time, it's just concern and worry. And is that necessarily wrong? No, he just wants me to be successful. He's like, hey, man, like, I'm just worried that we won't have enough money to feed yourself, or that you won't have enough money. And this is something that's going on through truly in my own life, is like, I want to make sure I have enough money to put my kids through the sports, because I never got that. And it hurts. Like it hurts to think that I couldn't do that. And so that's the voice there that's like, hey, this is something that we're concerned with. And we think that if everybody loved you, then this wouldn't be a problem. And I know that's not the case. I know that, but that little voice thinks it is.
Yep.
And so part of it is listening to it, right? What's the actual message? Because he cares. Don't ignore it. Yeah.
He's trying.
That's why he's saying it.
His own way.
Exactly. But he's not driving the ship. No. And he only has one vote. He doesn't have 10 votes. He has one vote. And then what does my king say? What does my warrior say? Right? What does my lover say? What does my magician say? What are these different versions of myself? What does my athlete say? What does he say? Right? He's kind of my warrior, but a little different.
Yeah.
And then what I'll do sometimes, if I'm still not sure, if I'm stuck on a problem, is I'll close my eyes and I'll imagine I'm having conversations with people that I really look up to. Right? I'll close my eyes. I've done it many times. I've had some amazing epiphanies of a conversation with Tony Robbins. I'm like, Tony, like, what should I do in this scenario, man? Like, what do you think? And I can hear his deep voice. Yeah. And he says this thing. And I'm like, oh, damn, that was really good. And then I'll close my eyes and I'll look over to Dean Graziosi and I'll say, Dean, what do you think in this? And his balance in life and work and his goals. And I was like, man, no, that makes a lot of sense. And then I'll look over to maybe Alex Hermosi and be like, dude, tell me something straight out. Like, what should I say here? And then I'll look at somebody else that I admire and allow this. This is a technique I learned from Think and Grow Rich, and having this counsel, not just of my own characters, but other people that maybe I can't have conversations with, but that I want to. And so what would they say? And yes, it's probably not as good as having a real conversation with them, but it's pretty damn good.
it doesn't matter. It helps you.
Exactly.
That's all it's about.
Exactly.
It helps you.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And the answers that you come up with are huge. And so yeah, to recap, what stopped me is exactly that. It's myself. It's my little version of me. And to be honest, it's most people. It's the scared, worried, fearful version of themselves. And that's how I go about moving through that. It's listening, understanding, being okay with it. If I need to cry, I'll literally, I think I'll have once a week, I'll just sit and listen to a song. I was talking about last time, and I'll just cry. I have no idea.
Same.
I
Same.
have no idea. I'm not thinking about anything. I'm just sitting listening to music and I'll just start bawling.
Yep. This is what
I
you
don't know what it's
need. You don't
about.
have to make sense of it. The
Yep.
body overrides the mind, and the mind doesn't like that. The mind gets frantic.
Yes.
It's like, well, what's going on?
Yep.
Are you crying because you're sad? It's like, no, I'm crying because I have an emotional bladder and it's full.
Mhm.
And I don't know why it's
I
full,
like
but
that.
I just, I need to pee. You know, like anything that gets stuck in our body. And I teach this to people that have a hard time releasing their emotions, mostly men.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, anything that you try to keep in your body, if it's vomit, if it's shit, if it's
Oh, yeah, yeah.
piss, anything that you try to keep inside that doesn't want to be in there, sweat, it
Yep.
causes you harm.
Yep. That's a great analogy.
Same with your emotions.
Powerful.
Yeah, it's like when you really understand that, the Nathaniel, I do, dude, I cry a little bit probably every day. And what I mean by that is like I'll be on Instagram or something and see something sad, and
Mm.
that's what is dangerous about these algorithms. Marcus and I have talked about this, is that you can go from feeling very sad about something to then seeing something very funny, then to see something very angry in 30 seconds. And
Yeah.
it's so much that it almost forces you to shut off your emotions. But we're
Yep.
not designed to do that. But yeah, I'll watch something. If I do feel some kind of emotion, if I see it on my phone, I'll put my phone down and I'm like, okay, I'll sit with it and I might have a tear or something. It might, who knows what it is. But I
Yeah.
allow myself to feel that because I'm not ashamed of that. Because
Hmm.
why would I be ashamed of feeling?
Yeah.
Isn't that what the purpose of life is?
Yeah.
Everything that you
Yes.
fucking want in life, whether it's not, it's watching your kids graduate, whether it's making $1 million, whether it's traveling to Italy, if you really step back to it, what you're really looking for is the feeling within your own nervous system that your own nervous system will create by achieving that thing.
Yes.
You're looking for feelings. That's what you're looking for. And it's like to shut that down is so disrespectful of yourself. But a lot of people are like, well, this is a bad feeling, and they start labeling emotions as good or bad.
Mm. Yep.
There's no such thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love what you said there. You start shutting down, and it's like, again, when you going back to your analogies, they're perfect analogies. You want to make $1 million. Why? So I can feel amazing. I can feel good. Okay, that's great. But if you don't take time to feel the other ones and you just block it all, you're never actually going to feel this good. And I say that because I've been there. I
Same.
would block all those negative emotions.
Same.
I would have success. I won the award and I'd be like, oh my God, it's amazing. And then boom, nothing.
Yep.
It lasted about an hour.
Yeah. It's like,
Not even an hour. And it's like, what's the point? Isn't the point is to feel it? And so if you shut down those emotions, it's not like you can't just be like, I'm just going to shut off all the negative ones and only turn up the good ones. Well, then it doesn't work like that, right? I mean, it's funny. I wish it'd be kind of fun,
like a
but then again,
vampire.
you're feeling good wouldn't really feel good anymore because that just became normal. So you actually, I would say you need those negative emotions to understand what it is like to feel good. And when you allow those, instead of shutting them down, you allow both to happen. So feel these negative ones because then the good feels so much better,
Yeah.
right? It's like the good ones just feel like, oh, like, oh, wow. And I can actually sit with it and I don't have to brush it off. I can just enjoy this moment because I won this award or I'm finally made that trip or yeah, I made some extra money. And the cool part is you can do that with those experiences. You can also do with previous experiences in your head and
Mm-hmm.
just thinking about those things. I try to do that daily where I'll think about something that just made me laugh and I'll just feel it in my body. And think about a time that was really romantic and I'll feel it in my body. Or think about a time where I was really proud. And then one that comes to my head is the first time watching both my kids play football on a field at the same time. It was amazing. And I was like, wow, this is really friggin' cool. So you can feel that anytime,
Yeah.
but you have to, as you said, you can't shut it down. You have to feel it. And I'm going to use that analogy of the emotional bladder is so powerful,
Yeah.
right? It's like, yeah, you have to let it out.
I always teach people, do you want to be a dam or do you want to be a river?
Yeah.
And a lot of people are dams where they
Yeah.
have all this stuff that's inside them
Yeah.
and they're not looking at them. Nobody's ever even taught them how to process their emotions. This is a
Yes.
crazy thing. I have a client that I work with, very successful client financially,
Yeah.
owns a lot of businesses, owns a plane, like high
Yeah.
level kind of success. And he has been on pills for his stomach for quite a long time,
Mm.
right? For digestion and things like that. We did a session about 3 weeks ago where we were talking about some pretty heavy shit that happened to him as a child. He's in his 50s. And he's like, oh, I feel this feeling here, this nauseous feeling. I was like, yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, I did an exercise where we breathed into that and we expanded it, and then it moved to his chest,
Yeah.
moved into his throat, and I was watching him. He couldn't swallow. And I'm like, just keep breathing into it. Keep breathing and imagine there's like a little balloon and you're expanding that little balloon wherever you feel this feeling. And
Mm.
I watched it move from his throat and I watched his face start to crumple and he started like tears started coming out.
Mm. Hmm. That's
And
awesome.
I was like, you just released emotion somatically. Like your emotions are not thoughts. Most people intellectualize their emotions. So when I work with
Yeah.
them, like, how do you feel? They like, oh, I feel good. Especially men, they're like, well, I got my investments are going well, my kids are
Yeah.
going well, and then they think about it, and then the thought is why they feel good.
Yeah.
I taught this man who's 50 something years old that your emotions are actually somatic experiences you feel in your body. And
Yeah.
and I was like, how do you feel now? He had a big emotional release that
Yeah.
he basically siphoned like a well
Yeah. Very cool.
through breath work, this feeling in his stomach. He's like, dude, I've felt that for fucking 40 years.
Wow.
And he's like, it's still there, but he's like, I've been going to my doctor for decades thinking that it was something wrong with my stomach. I'm like, yeah, because nobody taught you. You had times in the past where you weren't able to process scary things, painful
Yeah.
things, because animals know how to
Yep.
regulate their nervous system. For example, if you have a dog, you'll watch your dog sigh sometimes. People are
Hmm.
like, oh, what are you sighing about? You have nothing to worry about. That dog
Hmm.
is not sighing for any other human projected reason that you think. What they're
Yeah.
doing is they're regulating their own nervous system and they're releasing emotion. So when dogs run around for a bit, you'll notice they might eventually sit down and they go, and
Yeah.
they'll
Yeah.
literally like it's like a blow off valve. Or if
Yeah.
an antelope is chased by a cheetah or a lion or whatever and they escape, they'll shake like this for like 5 minutes. They'll
Yeah.
release all the fight or flight within their body and then they'll go about their day. Because if they didn't do that, can you imagine being an antelope and you don't do that? Every time you try and eat grass, you're like, dude, I got fucking chased by a lion yesterday. What is there
Yeah.
out there? Like, what the fuck? You
Yeah.
can't,
Yep.
like, that's crazy. But we don't
Yep.
do that. What do? We have divorces, we have abuse, we have all this shit that's happened to
Yeah.
us when we're little kids or even as
Mm.
adults. And what do? We almost get into a car accident and then we sit at our desk.
Yeah.
Like, and then that energy has to get trapped somewhere. It causes
Yeah.
dis-ease. It's the lack of ease.
Yep.
And by teaching, that's what I'm passionate about. I'm helping. Somebody asked me what I do. I help men feel their feelings. I help men process their emotions. That's what I
I
do.
love that.
And seeing that in somebody, and he was like, I take pills for this, and he's like, I don't think that it's what I think it is. I was like, buddy, like, let's not even get started. There's an
Yeah.
entire $1 trillion pharmaceutical industry that is siphoning human consciousness because nobody
Yeah.
thinks that they can regulate their own nervous system because
Yeah.
nobody taught them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I love exactly what you said there. And I actually made a note of that is You're right. We're not taught it. It's we've talked about this before, but how do men learn to process things? How does anybody learn to process things? I feel like you have men that you shut up and you just do it and you don't be a baby in this. And then you have women where not all, but some can get in the cycle of it. And they're just constantly feeling and feeling and feeling and feeling and feeling and never actually moving and doing anything about it. And neither are good.
No.
Doing nothing about it and trapping it and hiding it and trying to move through it, not good. Getting stuck and getting caught in that loop where you're just constantly feeling the same thing over and over and over and over and over again is not good either.
No.
So because nobody's taught us, like you said, how to do that. And that's funny you said that, because part of what I'm doing now really is, and that's what the course is actually about, is how to implement healthy habits, ways, self-talk, all these different things that you can do to help yourself feel the emotions that you want to feel on a regular basis, and how to navigate ones that maybe aren't as fun.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
How to do that. And again, a part of me is said exactly what you were saying before. Oh, well, everybody knows this stuff and this stuff. Like, what do you mean? But then you start talking to people and it's like, oh, like a good friend of mine, he's very successful, has a great video game company, great dude, like just absolute great human. Him and his wife are just so kind, so generous, like these super wonderful people. And then you start talking to them about certain things. And, oh, well, I get anxiety and this, and this. And then we bring up, oh, well, how much time are you spending on social media and this? Oh, well, this much time. And you're going like, oh, huh. And what are you looking at? And what are you spending your time inundating yourself with?
Yeah.
And that's the thing now, is because part of what I do is going into subconscious training, what that looks like on the very surface level, but get started with it. And if you look at how your subconscious is run and trained and how you program that, it's through other people. Well, when we're in a society where we don't spend a lot of time in communities, right? Like in tight knit communities. And thankfully I'm building that. And I have that with with coaching and with playing and playing football and coaching at the high school and all doing all this stuff. You start to connect that, which is good. But a lot of people don't have that. And so then where are you getting this sense of community?
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time it's on your phone. Well, who's feeding you that community? Who's feeding you that information? Oh, well, it's an algorithm that wants you to just keep clicking and pressing buttons. This is why I put a limit on my phone for 5 minutes for social media. If I need to do something else, I can remove it and do whatever, but it's 5 minutes, because if I don't, yes, I will get trapped on that scroll hole too.
Yeah.
But I feel the best when I don't. And so understanding that what you're allowing in trains your subconscious. Because if you're up here thinking, your subconscious is going, and it's Dr. Bruce Lipton talks about this, and he's got some amazing research. He talks about your subconscious mind and how if you're thinking up here, or if you're in the theta state, which a lot of times you are, where you're just kind of like half dreaming, and when you're looking at your screen, you're not really aware, or you're half aware.
You're not
there.
Where do you go? That's a thing I've thought about many times. Like, where the fuck did I go? I'm not here. I went somewhere else.
That's that. I would say it's kind of like almost like a form of meditation. They did research years ago about how watching TV and screens was like a form of meditation or similar. Your brain goes into a similar state. Yeah. And so my point is, that's opening up the gate to your subconscious mind and just saying, come on in. So it's like, if you had a defense, again, I love Lord of the Rings. Let's use that analogy. Oh my God, the White Tower. What's the city with the White Tower? And yeah, can you imagine if they're like, you know what? Let's let all the orcs in. Let's just open it up. We're going to just like chill for a bit. And because we got our screen, let's just let everybody in. And then once they're in, then we'll fight them. It's like, dude, this is crazy. Your first line of defense, you're not addressing. And so when you realize how powerful your subconscious is, which is your programming, which is 90%, 95% of your waking day is your subconscious programming. When you look at that and you go, well, no wonder why I can't. And this is part of the work I'm doing and I really love helping people with, is when you realize like that's what you're working against. And only 5% is you being conscious and present, actually pushing towards those dreams and goals. If like it doesn't make any sense, you're out to lunch. Not to mention your subconscious mind, they say, is 1,000,000 times more powerful than your conscious mind. So like, how is that going to work?
I know,
right?
It's not like, that's why I laugh when people are like, oh, I'm a logical person. I'm like, no, you're not. No, you're not. Like you think you are. I heard this analogy that some people like, a lot of people think that the conscious mind or the logical mind is driving the car of your consciousness. There's the logical
Mm.
and the emotional mind.
Hmm.
You imagine a rally driver, right? And they've got that guy that's like sharp left up there, and they've got
Yeah.
the coach next to them, basically reading out the map.
Hmm.
The logical part of your mind is like that person in the passenger seat, and the
Yeah.
emotional part of the mind is the one actually driving the fucking car. And a lot of the
Yeah.
time, you're like, "Hey, dude, hey, left up here." Is like, nope, I don't want to do that. And went to if you take that to the extreme point, I have a friend that shared this with me who used to be in deep addiction, right? And he said, I
Mm.
used to go to the ATM and I'd be like crying, pulling money out to buy drugs. I'm like, that is the perfect, the logical mind is like, please fucking stop. But the
Yeah.
deep pain which caused the addiction is like, no, I'm driving the fucking car. Shut the fuck up. I'm not going to listen to you. This is what I'm doing. I'm going to go buy the drugs because that is the solution to my pain. The drugs were not the problem; they are the solution to the problem, and the problem was the pain that
Yeah.
person feels. And that's the extreme version of it. But if you
Yeah.
just imagine that analogy for yourself, the like you said, the limbic brain
Yeah.
makes decisions. This is crazy, and you can look this up. It makes decisions 80,000 times faster than the prefrontal cortex, which is the mind.
Yep.
And I feel like that some people's anxiety is
That's crazy.
that driver
Yeah.
arguing with the passenger. And the passenger's
Yeah.
like, why can't you do these habits?
Hmm.
Like I've had clients that can't brush their teeth, Nathaniel. Like their
Yeah.
teeth have fallen out. And I'm coaching them to try to brush their teeth again.
That's wild.
And with somebody like that, I'm like, okay, so what is something that you actually do every day? She's like, well, I take my antidepressants. I was like, cool. I was like, so what do you think you could do to brush your teeth? She's like, well, I could. And people are so much more powerful. She's like,
Yeah.
I could
Yeah.
put my toothbrush next to my antidepressants. I was like, boom, there you fucking go. Like, sweet.
Yep.
And she used to be a highly successful lawyer, this woman.
Oh wow.
And then she's basically reduced to this because of horrible things that happen in her life.
Mm.
But like pulling herself out of that is like, oh, I am powerful. I can make a choice. I'm not the victim of my circumstances. I'm not powerless. And
Yeah.
that's what that's really about. You're not powerless, even though you might feel stuck, even though you might not know. You are more wise than you give yourself credit for. And
Yep.
Nathaniel's talked about a lot of different habits, especially meditation. If you feel lost or confused, sit with that feeling, sit with that
Yep.
loss and confusion. He also painted that picture of there's different younger parts of us. And something that I teach is imagine there's a round table, and every year you've been alive, there's that version of you sitting at the table.
Hmm.
And they all have a vote, like you said. Like they don't have all the votes, but they have a voice, and I'm going to listen to them. So
Hmm.
there's a 15-year-old version of me that watched his parents get divorced and watched my dad have a psychological break. I remember that. I
Mm.
remember that year between like 14 and 15. I've talked
Yeah.
to him a lot. There's the 19-year-old version of me that whose mum got diagnosed with cancer and thought she was going to die.
Oh.
There
Yep.
was the 23-year-old version of me whose friend died of an overdose, of a drug overdose.
Mm.
There's the 11-year-old version. There's all these different versions of me that have lived an entire year, and good things and painful things have happened in that year. And they all have a vote.
Yep.
And I think that if people really understood that and sat with them just like you did and listened to those parts and be like, hey, 15-year-old, we're all going to listen to you. Whatever you want
Hmm.
to say is okay. If you
Yep.
want to say some horrible things that are you're feeling and that you're ashamed of, you're scared of, we'll listen.
Yeah.
But also, I'm an adult now. It's my job to look after you. Maybe your parents hurt you. Maybe they didn't do the
Yeah.
best job, but I'm here now. And
Yep.
I'm 30, 20, 40, 60, 50, whatever age you are, you can now become what you didn't have. You, like, for example, you want to make enough money so your kids can go to football, so they don't feel the pain that you felt.
Mm.
And that's a driving factor for you.
Yep.
So you can now become the man that you didn't have when you were that age. And then that little version of you that was between 10 and 12 that maybe felt those feelings, you can look at him in the eye, in your mind's eye, through a meditation, and be like, hey, man, I'm the guy, I'm the dad that you didn't have. And you became that because of the pain that you went through at that age.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That shit is powerful.
Absolutely. And I love what you said there at the end. And you kind of brushed over, but it's so critical, is thanking that person.
Yep.
Thanking that guy. We talked about this before, but thank the person that you were. And this is truly my message, a few of them, but one of them being is like, if you looked at every struggle you went through, and as you went through, and I have, yes, during the time, it's tough. I get it. I've been through some shit, a lot of shit.
Mm-hmm.
I've had to raid my kid's piggy bank, quite literally, to pay for groceries. That was a fucking terrible feeling.
Yep.
Honestly, I've never felt less like a man.
Yep.
But what did that teach me? It gave me more drive, right?
Again.
What going through bad relationships, what did that give me? It was terrible at the time. I had stomach issues for a year. I thought it was something else. I thought it was dairy. I thought it was apples. I tried everything.
Crohn's disease. I
had everything. Oh yeah. And then, oh wait, no, I'm just in a bad relationship. And we both didn't need to be in that relationship. And oh wait, as soon as you broke up, it got better. Well, weird, right? Or as soon as I started doing my somatic therapy, it got a lot better. Okay, like who knew? But every single one of those became a blessing because of the mindset that I had towards it. And just like you did. And now, and yes, during it sucks. And then you move past that into, okay, that was annoying. And then you move into like, well, I learned some stuff. And then you go into, you know what? I'm actually really grateful for that.
Yeah.
I'm grateful. And
through that, you have to go through that.
Yes. And it's saying, and that's the toughest part is, and I've had tears lots of times with myself, is like, I had to thank that previous version of myself and be like, thank you. You're the one that got me here. You're the one that got me to this. Look at us now. Like we're doing, like, life is pretty good. And I'm not saying it's perfect. There's always stuff I'm working on, but you're the one that got me here. And I'm grateful for that. And so if you're listening and you're going through that thing, look at that struggle, work on those emotions. Don't let that bladder fill up, right? Empty that emotional bladder, whatever way you need. If you're for the first time, set a timer, 20 minutes, an hour, whatever it is. That's cool. A day, that's fine. And then what can you learn from that lesson? And can you be grateful for that lesson? And what do you want to move? How do you want to move forward with this? What do you want your life to look like? And then lastly, to touch back on habits, because that's our programming, that's our subconscious mind, is what habits do you need to do to not have these things come back up, or to be able to manage these things when the next challenge comes? Because it's not because we're always going to have challenges. It's just, can I be stronger to handle a bigger challenge? Can I be stronger to handle the challenge of starting my own business? Okay, then to be able to manage 3 employees, and then the challenge of 10 employees, or to be able to love myself, to then love a partner, to then love a partner and my family.
And that's a beautiful way to end the show, my friend.
Yeah.
That was amazing. Thank you for sharing all that. It's just like, it's such a great way to start the day. I'm gonna head off to work after this and feel good, man. I feel really, really good. Where can people follow you? Where can people, if they want to touch into your podcast, if they want to follow what you're doing, where can people find you?
Yeah. Well, thank you again for being such an amazing host and for having me here and for asking that. You can find me on Instagram. It's the Emotional Fitness Podcast. I'm on YouTube as well, the Emotional Fitness Podcast, Spotify, a lot of work there. You go to lifepurposey.ca. We have different coaching options. But yeah, even if you just have questions, honestly, like my favorite thing is to be able to help people move through things and to realize how amazing they truly are. And and so even if it's just a question of like, hey, I'm struggling with this, like I'm here, I want to help. I want to in some way or another be able to help you move through that. So if that's you, then yeah, absolutely you can follow me on any of those, message, reach out. I do some great stuff. And, you know, I've had a wonderful guest on there named Ahren Lynch-Potter as well. So you can always listen to that episode as well.
Appreciate it, man.
Yeah.
Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Go follow Nathanael. I don't need to tell you why. If you made it to this point in the podcast, you know what you need to do. We'll see you next week.